What is going on, everybody? Welcome to the Week 5 XFL Power Rankings. I hope you guys have been enjoying the XFL content. I know putting together these videos every week has really helped me get a better understanding of the league, and when you know the players a little more, know maybe what players might have NFL futures, I think that is a big part of what can make the XFL more exciting. So I hope you are enjoying it. I hope you're hitting the like button to help share it, and also physically share it as well. Tell your friends how you're enjoying the XFL, and tell them about my power rankings as well if they want to know more about the league, if you so believe that these are informative, which I hope I am doing a good job of that. So let's hop in here. Starting at the bottom, we got a new team, the Seattle Dragons, picking up another loss this week. And heading into the season, this team was dead last as far as not Super Bowl championship futures, and the roster itself, offensively, is pretty abysmal, and that offense has really struggled all year. Now we've got a quarterback battle going on. Brandon Silvers has had his moments, but that's kind of what you get from a quarterback like him, who does have the arm strength. He does have the physical tools, but just doesn't really have it between the ears. And at this point, he's not super immobile. He's not going to extend a bunch of plays, avoid a bunch of sacks. And that's kind of what they're trying to get with JT Daniels, who has the ability to run and, quite frankly, is about as accurate and smart as Brandon Silvers. So maybe that kickstarts some things. I think some teams are figuring out quicker than others that that's kind of what you need to do in this league. I've said it many times. I'll say it again. There's not enough offensive linemen in this world to fill out 32 good offensive lines in the NFL. So when you get to the XFL, these guys are backups to backups to backups in the NFL. They are not good offensive linemen. The depth across the country at pass rusher, defensive line is much bigger. So you are going to see really high pressure numbers, quarterbacks that need to extend plays and sense pressure and get out of the pocket. So that's a theme here with the Seattle Dragons. It's a theme with a lot of teams here. But the Dragons, they have a good defense, and they kind of model the Seattle Seahawks in a lot of ways. They kind of have that speed at the second level with guys like Kyle Cairo. Godwin Igwebuike is a bigger safety, can wear a lot of hats for this defense. So, I do think they have the kind of home field and defensive feel. Like they're a pretty solid team to watch, honestly. They just can't put it together offensively, and to me, I think warrant being at the bottom. And then we have the LA Wildcats. They're going to drop down 2 spots after they had been climbing. So first game of the season, their starting quarterback, Josh Johnson, did not play. And ever since then, he's been playing, and they've won. They almost won one and picked up another win, last week. So they can move the ball, and they did it again this week. Josh Johnson, 40 pass attempts, completed 25 of them, 335 yards, 2 touchdowns, but just struggling in the red zone, unable to finish drives. Did have that interception as well. So they're just missing a little bit. They do have a good playmaker there in Trey McBride, who has definitely found a home in the XFL. Former 7th round pick of the Tennessee Titans, a guy that a lot of people in the draft world really liked because of that physicality. Now, he's not a burner at all, and he's starting to show that skill set translate a little more in the XFL. I mean, he's putting up huge numbers, and he's kind of won the starting job after not being a full-time starter to start the year. So 13 receptions, 200 yards, 3 touchdowns just over the last 2 weeks. So the one thing I'll say about the Wildcats is they were rising for a reason. They can move the ball, but just kind of missing a little bit of that it factor on the offensive side of the ball as far as finishing drives, actually that swagger to kind of be a good offense that I think they have potential to be, but they got to figure all that out. And they lost to the Guardians this week. They only they gave up 17 points to what's been a really bad offense. So defensively, they've had their struggles as well when they're not playing Cardale Jones. But yeah, let's move on. Number 6 here, the Tampa Bay Vipers. They're going to climb up a spot. They're kind of going through their learning curves, trying to figure out who their quarterback of the future is going to be, so to speak. Aaron Murray's been, I think, hurt all year, but I don't think he's the answer anyway. So they've been going with Taylor Cornelius the last few weeks, and I've been a little harder on him, harder on this team, because at first he kind of looked like that big, tall, stiff pocket passing guy, but he can actually move a little bit, and he kind of played a good game manager role here for the Vipers. I do think this defense can kind of ball out. You got a guy on that defensive line, Nikita Whitlock, a 5'10", 250-pound defensive tackle. It's closer to like a fullback or a linebacker, but he's just causing mayhem in the middle. Kind of their best defensive player. It's just a fun story. Obviously, a guy that's probably not going to go to the NFL, but a guy at that size can kind of find a way in a league like this to have a career, and I think that's pretty cool. And then, of course, Dan Williams, wide receiver for Tampa Bay, continues to kind of impress. Coming out of Jackson State, he's that bigger-bodied kind of possession jump ball guy. But definitely a guy that I think is going to start to attract some attention from NFL teams, and at worst will be in training camps in August competing for a 53-man roster spot. So Tampa Bay's got some things going on. They're definitely looking better. They took out the DC Defenders this week, who are going to come in here at number 5, and this is tough because the last 2 weeks they have been the worst team in the XFL, and I think this is the last week that they have to kind of recapitalize what they showed in the first 2 weeks. This has been the most polarizing team so far. The first 2 weeks, they looked like the best team in the XFL. Awesome on defense, Cardale Jones, playmakers, speed on offense. Pep Hamilton looked like a really good offensive coordinator, but all of a sudden they just flipped a switch and it wasn't in the right direction. They can't score points, their defense stinks, and they're in a lot of trouble. Cardale Jones was just epically bad again this week. What did he complete? Like 40% of his passes for just 72 yards, no touchdowns, 1 pick. Like, come on. That's back-to-back weeks basically getting shut out. And the defense hasn't been much better either, but they've been on the field all game. So I still think it's in them to figure this thing out. Maybe we see Tyree Jackson come in at quarterback next week after Cardale and what he's done the last 2 weeks. It's like he got a moment of starhood in this league and just stopped trying. It's been embarrassing. So a pretty epic fall for the Defenders. Not going to put them all the way at the bottom yet because I think they have some more potential than the 3 teams we just talked about, but it is not looking good for my DC Defenders. I bought myself some apparel, and ever since, they've fallen off a cliff. Then number 4, the New York Guardians. They're going to climb up 4 spots. We had them 8th last week, and that was really because of the dysfunction that seemed to be going on in that organization. And I talked about potentially an early firing of their head coach. Like, there was bickering. They got slaughtered in St. Louis. The defense had fallen apart, lost their composure. Matt McGloin, their quarterback, was just bad and fighting with the coach. It was just a mess. Well, they make the full-time switch at quarterback. They go to Luis Perez, and all of a sudden, they stabilize things a little bit. Now, they only scored 17 points, so I still think this offense has some problems. I don't know if Perez is going to be the long-term answer here, but this defense, like I said, week 1, it just might be the best defense in the XFL, and that counts for something. They have Olabunmi Rotimi. He might be the best defensive player in all of the XFL. He came out of Old Dominion in 2018. He's got the NFL size, like 6'4", 255 is that defensive end. So definitely a guy that I think will be in the NFL next year, probably as a rotational pass rusher. But he's a beast, and he's actually being just a total stud against the run. But then you got Jamar Summers, someone I really liked coming out of UConn, just a playmaker. My comp for him coming out was Malcolm Butler. He did good in the AAF, is making plays here in the XFL. Not great in coverage necessarily, but does have those playmaker instincts. Someone I think could be in the NFL. And then Garrett Dooley out of Wisconsin, kind of a smaller linebacker, but he's balling out for them too. So I think they've got, low-level NFL talent on this defense, and it shows. So they're definitely climbing up. They've stabilized the organization. That's really all they need. But I still think this offense is not quite enough to compete with some of the top teams in this league. Then we got the Dallas Renegades. They have definitely just kind of found ways to win. They are really dealing with some injuries with Landry Jones, and it is going to make things difficult for them. But this is a talented roster. They have a good defense. They have playmakers on offense. They might be the most well-coached team in the league, so that obviously counts for something. Now, Landry Jones, I don't think he is the best quarterback in this league. He's somewhere in the 3 to 5 range, I would say. But the drop-off between him and Philip Nelson, if you listen to me week 1, I said bet against the Dallas Renegades when it was announced that Philip Nelson would be starting because he is miserable. And he was like crying after he throws a pick at the end of this game. And they did lose this week, but it was against the Houston Roughnecks, who, newsflash, are a really good football team. And they were close. They had the ball at the end. I don't think they were ever all that close to winning this game, but they kept it in it. But basically what I'm getting at here is I think Landry Jones is going to miss a couple weeks, and based on what Philip Nelson has shown, they can't go to him. And that just might end up being a blessing for this team, because I think there's upgrades out there to Landry Jones that could set this team over the edge. If they could get a more mobile quarterback and kind of figure out how to make this offense click at like full cylinder, they could actually be up there with St. Louis and Houston. But the only other guy I saw on their roster is Brogan Roback. He was a Hard Knocks star when the Cleveland Browns were on Hard Knocks. He was the third string behind Baker and Tyrod. They really focused on him off the field and him and his girlfriend. So is he going to start this week? I don't know. Maybe they find a way to, give someone else a call. I think there's guys kind of sitting in the NFL ranks, maybe like a Logan Woodside, or go all the way up to, maybe you could get like Brett Hundley to come in here and play for half a season or something. Those are just a couple examples. I don't even know what their contract situation is, but the Landry Jones thing might force them to look elsewhere at quarterback, and I think that could be a good thing in the long term for the Dallas Renegades. And then number 2, the St. Louis Battlehawks, and there is a clear tier gap up between the top 2 teams in this league and the bottom 6, quite frankly. The bottom 6 are all kind of ranked in the same tier. I feel like these teams could all beat each other any given day, but St. Louis and Houston, who's going to be number 1, are just on a different level. So St. Louis has probably the most well-rounded team in the league. They're very good on offense. Jordan Ta'amu has been excellent, very clearly the second best quarterback in this league, has the mobility you look for, but also is a young guy who just kind of fell through the cracks in the draft and is in his second year, basically coming out of Ole Miss. And he can play. I think he's a guy that is going to get looks as a backup quarterback at the next level. They have Demorny Pearson-L, not a burner. He's 5'9", but that's exactly what is great for the XFL. He's one of these guys that probably won't ever make it to the NFL because of his size and speed. But if he can kick ass in the XFL and become a household name there in St. Louis, then that's great. So this 5'9" slot wide receiver out of Nebraska, Demorny Pearson-L, has just been a target monster for this offense. And then defensively, they play pretty well defensively, especially when they're at home, and that crowd is crazy. Like, if you don't think people are into the XFL, check out that home crowd and how the St. Louis team and their fans get so into those games. And then number 1 is going to be the Houston Roughnecks. And this really is just all about P.J. Walker. They've got some other playmakers on the offensive side of the ball. And defensively, they don't do a ton that makes you go like, oh, yeah, they got a really good defense. Like, they do enough. They're basically the XFL version of the Kansas City Chiefs, and Philip Walker is their Patrick Mahomes. Like, they've got some playmakers around. I mean, Kansas City's got insane playmakers, but it's really just the swagger they have. They know that they're the best team in the league, and these two teams played in week 2 as well. It was a great 28-24 game, so I think that these two teams probably destined for, the championship game or a playoff matchup. I don't know how the seeding works and all that, if they're in the same conference or how that all plays out. I think everyone's just in the same conference and they seed the top 4 teams, but those are the power rankings this week. I hope you found it informative. I hope you consider hitting that like button. Please drop a comment as well, what you think, if the order is off. How are you guys enjoying the XFL? Cheers as always, and we'll see you for the next one. Peace.